Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, July 28th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 582 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the audio podcast platforms. And today we begin our second week of New York Jets 2025 player previews. You know the drill. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we take a look at two players in each episode, one on the offensive side of the football and the other on the defensive side of the football. And today, to kick off week number 2, we're going to take a look at left tackle Olu Fashanu, and on the defensive side of the football, we're going to take a look at safety Tony Adams. So we'll start on the offensive side here with the left tackle Olu Fashanu, entering year 2 at 22 years old. He'll be 23 in December, so age 22, partially 23 season here. Of course, the first round pick, 11th overall from a year ago, standing at 6'6", 312 pounds. And Olu, among all this entire offensive line, you enter the 2025 season, of course, with very high expectations for this unit up front, and you specifically enter this season and hopefully the next many seasons here for the New York Jets with high amounts of optimism around not only Olu, but Armand Membou as well. You hope that you have your two bookend tackles for the next 10, 15 years. In a perfect world, that's the case. And what this team has in the interior of this offensive line, you got to be excited about this unit. And Olu enters year number 2 as a big piece for this team, as a big X factor for this team. And you look forward to seeing the type of jump that Olu can take this year. And if he's able to take a very sizable year 2 leap, the impact it can have on this New York Jets team and on this New York Jets offensive line, whether it's the run blocking getting better or his continued improvement at the strength of his game, which of course is his pass blocking. And when you look back at Olu's season last year, and as you kind of project what to expect this season, but what you saw out of last year and what you want to see going in here at the during this 2025 season, it was an interesting rookie year, right? Olu was drafted, brought in, and he was sitting behind Tyron Smith, of course, right? Last season was a developmental year, a year to sit, a year to watch, a year to learn. And very early on in the season, Olu was thrown into the fire, but not at left tackle. A lot of Jet fans sort of forget that last season, of course, Olu's first couple games, his first starts in the NFL did not come at left tackle. It was at right tackle and right guard. Two positions that he was not drafted here to play. And you look at last season as a whole, this was a guy that started the season with 159 snaps at right tackle and then played 37 snaps at right guard before finally, later on in the year, when Tyron Smith went down with an injury, he was playing his natural position. And he ended up playing 336 total snaps at left tackle. So early in the year last year, it was tough to evaluate Olu. It was tough to really understand and get a gauge of where he was at because it was two positions that he was playing that he does not primarily play, two positions that he was not brought here to play. But when Tyron Smith went down and Olu needed to step in, he was one of the bright spots late in the year. I always say this. Last year was so bad. And late in that season, watching those games, it was brutal. There was nothing to look for. The season was over. But one of the reasons and one of the only good things to watch for down the stretch of last season was Olu. Really, it was. You went into those games late in the year last year, and one of the only things you were excited to watch for was Olu and the development and the continued strong play from him. Because when he went in at left tackle, you saw a lot of positives. You saw the pass blocking and why he was so highly graded coming out of college in that area. And you saw the potential for this guy being this team's blindside left tackle cornerstone piece of the future. So when you break down some of the numbers, not only what you, of course, saw with your eyes, but when you break down some of the numbers, right? This is a guy, 7 starts total last year, 5 of them coming at left tackle, came in week 10 when Tyron Smith went down, and then saw consistent playing time week 11 through week 16, except week 13. Week 16, of course, suffered the foot injury against the Rams, and that ended it. But during that stretch, 5 starts, you saw a ton of positives in those 5 starts. And I want to break down a couple different stretches and also just reveal a couple different games where he was doing things during this stretch. One of the better left tackles when he came out and was playing during that stretch, there was a couple areas where he was ranking near the top of left tackles in the NFL once he finally got the opportunity to go out there and see consistent playing time. You break down his numbers from week 13 through week 16. During that stretch, he had 212 pass blocking snaps, 0 sacks, 7 pressures, a 4.58% pressure rate, and 97.7 pass block efficiency. His pressure rate ranked 10th out of 26 offensive tackles with 150 snaps played during that stretch. And his pass block efficiency also ranked 10th among 26 qualified tackles who played 150 snaps during that stretch. So top 10 during that stretch, his first real taste of NFL action in both pressure rate and pass block efficiency. When you look at a little bit of a larger view, week 10 through week 16, those are the weeks he was in at left tackle. Week 10, of course, taking over. 336 snaps, 70.2 overall grade, a 74.7 pass block grade, a 64.3 run blocking grade, 12 pressures, just 1 sack allowed, 0.47% sack rate allowed, and he finished with a 96.9 pass block efficiency. The biggest takeaway was what you saw from the pass blocking. Coming out in 2014 out of Penn State, he was the best pass blocking offensive lineman in the draft. Still had room to grow, still does have room to grow as a run blocker, and we'll get to that here in a second. But from a pass blocking perspective, was the best. And you saw that on display last year. A lot of the consistent, productive, impressive pass blocking reps that you saw from week 10 through week 16 when he was out there at left tackle. And the numbers back up the eye test as well. I also plucked 2 games during that stretch, just 2 games by themselves where he looked really good. And here are some of the numbers. Week 13 against Seattle, 42 pass blocking snaps, no sacks, no pressures. Week 15 against Jacksonville, he had 58 snaps, no sacks, 1 pressure, and he finished that game with an 80.5 Pro Football Focus grade, which was the highest among Jets offensive linemen that week. So also wanted to show those 2 games as well, just as an example of some of the good play that we saw out of him during that small little stretch. Again, Olu was one of the only reasons you were watching those games towards the end of the year. It was, what can we see out of Olu today? Let's see this consistent good play. And now the next step for Olu, the pass blocking, you saw a lot of great things. And you expect that to only get better. If he reaches his potential, he can be one of the elite pass blocking left tackles in the NFL. And that's ultimately what you want from your blind side tackle, from your cornerstone left tackle that are so difficult to find. That's what you want. Elite pass blocker. But the next step now is to improve as a run blocker. And last year, you saw some bumps as a run blocker. He has some room to grow as a run blocker. That was the case coming out of college, and that still is the case. And he's going to have every opportunity to do that this year because this is going to be a team that's going to be a run-first offense. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. He's going to be counted on to improve as a run blocker as well. And I think he will. And I think he can. And the run blocking improves, and the pass blocking, which is already shown it can produce at a high level at the NFL level in the short playing time he had last year, that continues to get better. You're looking at a potential breakout in just year number 2 for Olu. And I truly believe he could be in store for that. I did, my offensive breakout episode a couple weeks ago, and he was on that list of an offensive breakout. Pass blocking's there. Next step, continue to improve the run blocking. His strength's always going to be his pass blocking. But if you can just improve the run blocking a little bit, his game gets so much better. And the future outlook looks so much better. And that's the opportunity, that's the chance he'll have to really break out in just year number 2 with consistent playing time and a full season ahead. So a lot to look forward to this year from Olu, who very easily could turn into, and already is, but implement himself really as one of this franchise cornerstones if he goes out and has a huge year number 2, which I believe he will and should have. Improvements as a run blocker, continue the success as a pass blocker. And you have yourself a really good football player up on the offensive line on a unit that should be one of the strengths for this New York Jets team in the trenches. So that's Olu Fashanu, player preview. Moving on now to the defensive side of the football. Take a look here at safety Tony Adams, entering year 4 at 26 years old. 5'11", 203 pounds, of course, was a UDFA in 2022 out of Illinois. Tony Adams has had an interesting career, and up to this point, a solid career here for the New York Jets. Not great, not bad. Really, you're going to hear me say this a lot about Tony Adams, but very average so far from a starting safety perspective for this New York Jets team. Of course, comes in 2022 as a UDFA, primarily plays that year depth role, only plays in 11 games, not a whole lot to really take away. You move into 2023. Chuck Clark, of course, got hurt in that offseason. Tony Adams got inserted in a starting role and went out there and had a productive 2023. In fact, in many areas, it was his best of his 3 seasons so far. And then you go into last year for Tony Adams, and in some areas you were hoping to see him take a big jump in, and he kind of stayed about the same as he was in 2023. Again, in actually some areas in 2023, he was a little bit better in. But last season, he was average. He was about what you would expect, gave you about what you'd expect for a UDFA who had a solid year in 2023 and is really a average to, at best, slightly above average safety. But it was a very interesting year last year for Tony Adams. Of course, he gets benched essentially by Woody Johnson, which didn't make any sense. Everything that went wrong last year, Tony Adams was the furthest thing from this team's biggest issue. And out of all the players right? When that bombshell report came out of all the players that Woody Johnson could have benched, why was it Tony Adams? Like, on a side note, how was it Tony Adams? Out of all the guys, of all the culprits of what went wrong, all of everybody who had a hand in the issues last year with the New York Jets, Woody Johnson really sat at his desk in Florham Park and said, Tony Adams needs to be benched. Like, that is such a random player to bench from Woody Johnson's perspective. Yes, he's a starting safety, but he's average and is really nothing crazy, right? He's not making a ton of money. He's not one of the top players on the team. Like, he could have benched so many other guys, and he chose Tony Adams. It was so random. And just kind of odd year in that standpoint. And then was, of course, a restricted free agent. Jets brought him back. Clearly, Muji and Glenn see something in him to bring him back from that standpoint. And you look at Tony Adams and just what he did last year and really what he's done in his 2 full years starting. He's been okay. He's been okay. Nothing more, nothing less. You look at 2024 alone, 15 games played, 84 tackles, 6 passes defended, 1 interception, 2 tackles for loss, actually even had a sack. 17 run stops, 21 receptions allowed. He had a 66.4 overall grade, 67.5 coverage grade, a 59.4 run defense grade, 12 missed tackles, and a 57.1 tackling grade. I'll get to it quickly here because you can kind of tell where I'm headed. The strength of Tony Adams' game has come in coverage. He has been a solid coverage safety. His big issues, and in some areas, a lot of Jet safeties over the years have dealt with these issues. Tackling. Jets as a whole have dealt with tackling, not just safeties. Specifically last year, the Jets have missed a lot of tackles. It's been a weakness with this defense. Tony Adams that hasn't been his strength. Run defense, not always his strength. While it was better in 2023, much better, last year wasn't great. But one thing Tony Adams does do well and has been solid at both years starting is coverage. He ranked 20 out of 64 safeties who played 50% of their snaps last year from a coverage standpoint. And then among all qualified safeties, which was 98, he ranked 38th overall. So coverage-wise, ranked out pretty well. And overall grade, ranked out pretty well. Put up 6 passes defended, had a couple tackles for loss, had an interception. That's what he brought from a 2024 standpoint. Now, you look at 2023, 15 games, 83 tackles, 3 picks, 5 passes defended, 6 tackles for loss, 23 run stops, 15 missed tackles, 53.2 tackling grade. So again, tackling, not his strength, but overall coverage grade, 65.2, which was 32nd among qualified safeties, and a 68 overall grade, which was 41st among qualified safeties, and then a 69.7 run defense grade. All of those ranking right in middle of the pack for safeties. Now you combine the 2023-2024 numbers. 26 games started, 30 games in his 30 games played. 30 games total played, 26 of those starts. 167 total tackles, 3 picks, 11 passes defended, 8 tackles for loss, 40 run stops, 39 receptions allowed. I found a couple of these other notes interesting. He had an 80.5 passer rating allowed combined over 2022 or 2023 and 2024, which was above league average by a good amount. The 2024 league average was 100.5. Tony Adams over those 2 years in his 30 games, 80.5. So above league average on that standpoint. And again, the tackling, however, 14.4 missed tackle rate, 27 total missed tackles, 2024 league average for safeties, 12%. So below average tackler can still improve in that area. But from a coverage standpoint, He's been above average, and he's been solid, and he's done a nice job from that standpoint. However, tackling could improve. You kind of line those two things up, and you get what is a average safety who most likely isn't your long-term fit, but is a okay stopgap as the Jets bring in Malachi Moore, who they drafted. Potentially he fits into the long-term picture more so. And that's interesting. There is no guarantee that Tony Adams is this team's week one starter. I would say he's more likely the week one starter than not. But it is interesting, and it is something to keep an eye on. There is a chance Malachi Moore could play a larger role for this team than maybe some might think. The fourth-round pick out of Alabama, and that larger role being potentially taking over Tony Adams' starting job. And again, I'm not saying this just because Tony Adams got benched last year. I don't buy that. But I don't really know how much better Tony Adams is going to get. I think this is just who he is. And that's more of a stopgap, 1 year kind of player for this team. And Malachi Moore, if he's developing and maybe a little bit ahead of schedule, potentially outplays Tony Adams and maybe finds his way onto this team as a starter at some point this year. But I do think Tony Adams will start the year as a starter, and he could play the whole season potentially as the starter. We'll see. But it's something to keep an eye on. But all in all, Tony Adams is a player. He's all right. He's okay. He's average. He does the job for a UDFA safety who came back 1 year deal now with the tender that they placed on him at about $3 million. He does the job from that perspective. And that's okay. Not a bad player at all in that secondary. And we'll see. Assuming he starts, gets an opportunity here to pair with Andre Sisco. And you see what that duo can do. So that's Tony Adams. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on Olu Fashanu and Tony Adams entering the 2025 season, and any other Jets thoughts? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Appreciate all of your support as always. Next player preview will come out on Wednesday, of course, so stay tuned for that. And as always, we'll have a ton of content between now and then. Appreciate you all so much. Until next time, JETS. Jets, Jets, Jets.